There was a time when almost everyone owned a Nokia phone, whether you lived in New York, London, Dubai, or a small town halfway across the world. One name dominated the mobile phone industry: Nokia. It wasn't just another technology company. It was the company that connected the world. At its peak, Nokia sold hundreds of millions of phones every year. Its devices were famous for their durability, their incredible battery life, and a level of reliability that became legendary. People joked that a Nokia phone could survive almost anything, and most of the time, they weren't exaggerating. By the mid-2000s, Nokia was the undisputed king of mobile phones. It controlled a huge share of the global market, generated billions in revenue, and seemed impossible to defeat. Then, everything changed. In just a few years, the company that once led the industry began losing customers, losing market share, and losing the future. New competitors arrived, technology evolved, consumer expectations changed, but Nokia didn't change fast enough. The question is, how can the world's biggest phone company lose its crown so quickly? Was it poor leadership, a failure to innovate, or one decision that changed everything? Because the story of Nokia isn't just about mobile phones. It's a story about success, overconfidence, innovation, and one of the greatest business collapses in modern history. By the end of this documentary, you'll understand how Nokia rose from a small company in Finland to become the most powerful name in mobile technology, why it lost everything, and the business lessons every entrepreneur can learn from its remarkable journey. So, let's go back, more than 150 years, to the forests of Finland, where the Nokia story first began. To understand how Nokia conquered the mobile phone industry, we first have to travel back to a time when mobile phones didn't exist, not even telephones. The year was 1865. Finland was still part of the Russian Empire. Its economy depended largely on agriculture, forests, and natural resources. It was during this period that a young mining engineer named Fredrik Idstiem founded a small paper mill near the Nokianverta River in southern Finland. The business was simple: turn Finland's vast forests into high-quality paper. Demand for paper was growing across Europe, and the company expanded quickly. A few years later, Idstiem opened a second paper mill near the same river. When it came time to name the business, he chose a name inspired by the river itself, Nokia. At the time, no one could have imagined that this small paper company would one day become one of the world's most famous technology brands. For decades, Nokia had nothing to do with electronics. It wasn't making phones, or computers, or anything related to communication. Instead, the company continued growing into completely different industries. It began producing rubber products, including boots, tires, and industrial goods. Later, it expanded into electrical cables. By the early 20th century, 3 separate Finnish companies had emerged: the original paper company, a rubber manufacturer, and a cable producer. Each was successful in its own field, but in 1967, something extraordinary happened. The 3 businesses merged, creating what became known as the Nokia Corporation. This merger would prove to be one of the most important decisions in the company's history, because cable manufacturing introduced Nokia to electronics. Electronics led to telecommunications, and telecommunications would eventually lead to mobile phones. During the 1970s, the world was changing rapidly. Computers were becoming more advanced. Electronic communication was growing. Governments and businesses needed better technology. Nokia recognized the opportunity. Instead of remaining a traditional manufacturing company, it began investing heavily in research and development. Engineers started designing electronic equipment, communication systems, and digital technologies. It was a bold move. There was no guarantee it would succeed. But Nokia understood something many companies didn't. The future belonged to technology. By the early 1980s, the company had taken another major step. It entered the growing telecommunications industry. At first, the business was small, but hidden inside that decision was the foundation of a future empire, because over the next 2 decades, the world would witness a communication revolution, and Nokia would be perfectly positioned to lead it. By the early 1980s, the world was changing. Communication was no longer limited to landline telephones. A new era was beginning, the era of mobile technology. Most people believed mobile phones would remain expensive, bulky, and only useful for governments or large businesses. Very few imagined that one day, Almost everyone would carry a phone in their pocket. Nokia saw that future before many of its competitors. Instead of treating mobile technology as a side business, the company made it its priority. It invested billions into research, engineering, and the next generation of wireless communication. Then, in 1987, Nokia introduced one of its earliest mobile phones, the Mobira Cinnamon 900. By today's standards, it was enormous. It weighed nearly 800 grams, cost thousands of dollars, and its battery lasted only a few hours. But at the time, it represented the future. The phone became internationally famous after Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev was photographed using one during a visit to Finland. The image spread around the world, and people even nicknamed the device the Gorba. It was free publicity, and it put Nokia on the global map. But Nokia wasn't interested in making phones only for politicians or business executives. Its real goal was much bigger. The company believed that one day, mobile phones would become everyday products. That vision became reality in 1992. Nokia launched the Nokia 1011, one of the world's first mass-produced GSM mobile phones. Unlike earlier analog devices, GSM offered clearer calls, better security, and the ability to connect across international networks. It wasn't just another phone. It represented the future of communication. As GSM networks expanded across Europe, Nokia expanded with them. Every new network created demand for more phones, and Nokia was ready, year after year. The company introduced devices that were smaller, lighter, more reliable, and easier to use. Then came one of the biggest turning points in Nokia's history. The legendary Nokia 3310, released in 2000. The phone quickly became a global icon. It wasn't the most advanced device. It didn't have a touchscreen, it couldn't browse social media, and it certainly couldn't stream videos, but it did something far more important. It worked. Every single day. Its battery lasted for days. It survived accidental drops, and for millions of people, it was their very first mobile phone. The 3310 became famous for its durability. Stories spread across the internet claiming it was nearly indestructible. Many of those stories became humorous exaggerations, but they reinforced Nokia's reputation for building phones people could trust. The company didn't just sell technology, it sold reliability. By the early 2000s, Nokia had become the largest mobile phone manufacturer in the world. Its phones were everywhere, from busy cities to remote villages. From students to business executives, for millions of people, Nokia wasn't simply a phone, it was the phone. But while Nokia was celebrating its greatest success, a revolution was quietly approaching. One that wouldn't be led by better buttons or stronger batteries. It would be led by a screen. That changed the future forever. By the early 2000s, Nokia wasn't just winning the mobile phone industry, it was defining it wherever you looked, in airports, schools, offices, or city streets. There was a good chance someone nearby was holding a Nokia phone. For millions of people, owning a mobile phone meant owning a Nokia. At its peak, the company controlled more than 40% of the global mobile phone market. Think about that for a moment. Out of every 10 mobile phones sold around the world, more than 4 carried the Nokia name. Very few technology companies have ever achieved that level of dominance. Sales reached hundreds of millions of devices every year. Profits continued to climb. Investors celebrated. Competitors struggled to keep up. It seemed as if Nokia had become unstoppable. But Nokia's success wasn't based on luck. It was built on understanding what customers actually wanted. People didn't need complicated technology. They wanted phones that were simple, reliable, affordable, and built to last. Nokia delivered exactly that. Its phones became famous for surviving drops, extreme temperatures, and years of daily use. While other devices often needed frequent charging, many Nokia phones could last several days on a single battery. That reliability became one of the company's greatest competitive advantages. Then there was the design. Every year, Nokia introduced new models for different types of customers. The Nokia 1100 became one of the best-selling electronic devices in history. The N-series brought cameras, music, and internet features to power users. The E-series targeted business professionals. There seemed to be a Nokia phone for everyone. And then, there was Snake, a simple game with simple graphics, yet somehow, it became one of the most recognizable mobile games ever created. Millions of people spent hours trying to beat their high scores. For many, Snake wasn't just a game, it was their first mobile gaming experience. Even the Nokia ringtone became legendary, just a few notes. And almost everyone instantly knew which phone was ringing. That kind of brand recognition is incredibly rare. Nokia wasn't just selling hardware, it was becoming part of everyday life. Behind the scenes, the company invested heavily in research and development. Thousands of engineers worked on improving mobile technology. New factories opened around the world. Its supply chain became one of the most efficient in the industry. Everything appeared to be moving in the right direction. By 2007, Nokia stood at the top of the mobile phone industry. Its leadership looked unshakable. Many analysts believed the company would dominate for decades to come. But history has a habit of surprising even the strongest businesses. Because while Nokia was celebrating another successful year, a company from California was preparing to introduce a product that would completely redefine what a mobile phone could be. On January 9, 2007, everything changed. On January 9, 2007, the world's biggest phone company wasn't on stage. Nokia wasn't making headlines. Instead, the spotlight belonged to a company that had never built a mobile phone before. Apple. Standing before a packed audience in San Francisco, Steve Jobs introduced a device that looked unlike anything people had seen. A phone, an iPod, and an internet communicator, all in one. It was called the iPhone at first. Many people weren't impressed. The phone was expensive, it didn't have a physical keyboard, it couldn't copy and paste text, it didn't even support 3G networks at launch. To many industry experts, it looked like an interesting experiment, but Apple wasn't trying to build a better phone. It was trying to reinvent what a phone could be. Instead of tiny buttons, the iPhone offered a large multi-touch screen. Instead of complicated menus, it used simple gestures instead of focusing only on calls and text messages. It turned the phone into a pocket computer. This was no longer just a mobile phone, it was a smartphone. At Nokia's headquarters, executives watched Apple's announcement. Many believed the company had nothing to worry about. After all, Nokia was still the market leader. Its phones sold in almost every country. Its profits were enormous. Why should it fear a newcomer? That confidence would soon become one of Nokia's biggest weaknesses. The company continued investing heavily in Symbian, its long-established mobile operating system. But Symbian had been designed for an earlier generation of devices. It worked well on keypad phones. It struggled on touchscreens as Apple refined the iPhone. Another competitor entered the race, Google. In 2008, Google introduced Android. Unlike Apple's closed ecosystem, Android could be used by multiple manufacturers. Companies like Samsung, HTC, LG, and many others quickly adopted it. Within a few years, the smartphone market became fiercely competitive. Every few months, new devices arrived with faster processors, better cameras, larger touchscreens, and thousands of downloadable apps. Consumers no longer wanted phones that only made calls. They wanted navigation, email, photography, music, games, social media, and eventually, an entire digital lifestyle inside their pockets. This was the biggest transformation the mobile industry had ever experienced. But Nokia moved too slowly. Instead of building a modern operating system from the ground up, the company tried to improve Symbian. Updates arrived. New devices launched, but the user experience still felt outdated compared to the iPhone and Android phones. Inside Nokia, engineers recognized the problem, but solving it wasn't easy. Years of success had created a massive organization. Decision-making became slower. Teams disagreed on strategy. Important projects were delayed, while Nokia debated its next move. Apple and Android manufacturers kept innovating. The gap widened. Customers began switching for the first time in years. People weren't asking, "Which Nokia should I buy?" They were asking, "Should I get an iPhone or an Android?" It was a question that would change the mobile industry forever. And for Nokia, it marked the beginning of a dramatic fall. By 2010, the warning signs were impossible to ignore. For the first time in years, Nokia wasn't setting the direction of the mobile industry. It was trying to catch up. Every few months, Apple introduced a more advanced iPhone. Android manufacturers released faster, smarter, and more powerful devices. Meanwhile, Nokia continued struggling with software that no longer met customer expectations. The problem wasn't the hardware. Nokia still built some of the best mobile phones in the world. Its engineers were talented. Its manufacturing was world-class. Its global distribution network remained one of the strongest in the industry. The real problem was inside the company. Over the years, Nokia had grown into a massive organization. Decisions that once took days now took months. Different departments often disagreed on priorities. Promising ideas were delayed, innovation slowed. And while Nokia debated, its competitors kept moving forward. Then, in September 2010, the company appointed a new CEO, Stephen Alop. He became Nokia's first non-Finnish chief executive. When Alop examined the company, he reached a painful conclusion. Nokia was standing on what he later described as a burning platform. In an internal memo that soon leaked to the public, he warned that Nokia had fallen behind its competitors. The smartphone market had changed, and the company could no longer rely on its past success. It was one of the most honest assessments ever made by the leader of a major technology company, but recognizing the problem was only the beginning. Nokia now faced an impossible decision. Should it continue improving Symbian, build an entirely new operating system, or partner with another company? In 2011, Nokia made its choice. Instead of adopting Android, the company announced a strategic partnership with Microsoft. Future Nokia smartphones would run on Windows Phone. The decision shocked the technology industry. Android was already gaining momentum. Manufacturers like Samsung were embracing it. Developers were creating thousands of Android apps. Consumers were becoming familiar with Google's ecosystem. Yet Nokia chose a different path. The partnership promised something unique. Microsoft would provide the software. Nokia would build the hardware. On paper, it looked like a powerful combination. In reality, it came too late. Windows Phone offered a clean design, but it lacked one critical ingredient: apps. Many of the world's most popular applications either arrived late or never appeared at all. Consumers noticed. Developers focused on Android and iPhone. The gap continued to grow. Sales declined even further. Market share collapsed. The company that had once dominated the mobile industry was now fighting simply to survive. By 2013, the unthinkable became reality. Nokia, the company that had once connected the world, decided to sell its mobile phone business. It marked the end of an era, but perhaps the most surprising part of the story was still to come, because the company that bought Nokia would soon discover that saving a fallen giant was far more difficult than anyone expected. When Microsoft announced it was buying Nokia's mobile phone business in 2013, the technology world was stunned. The deal was worth more than $7 billion. For Microsoft, it looked like the perfect opportunity. The company already dominated the computer industry through Windows. Now, it wanted to become a major player in smartphones, and who better to help than the company that had once ruled the mobile phone market? For Nokia, the decision was painful. Selling its phone division meant saying goodbye to the business that had made its name famous across the world. But management believed there was no other choice. Competition from Apple and Android had become overwhelming. The partnership with Microsoft hadn't reversed the decline, and losses continued to grow. So, the deal went ahead. Microsoft took control of Nokia's mobile phone business. Thousands of employees joined Microsoft. Factories changed ownership, and a new chapter began. The company introduced a new line of devices, known as Microsoft Lumia. The phones received positive reviews. Many critics praised their cameras, their smooth performance, and the clean design of the Windows Phone operating system. But there was one problem: people weren't buying them. The hardware wasn't the issue. The software wasn't the biggest issue either. The real problem was the ecosystem. By now, consumers had become deeply invested in Android and iPhone. Their photos, apps, contacts, messages, and digital lives were already there. Developers focused on creating apps for the two largest platforms. As a result, many popular apps either arrived very late on Windows Phone or never arrived at all. Consumers noticed. Without a strong app ecosystem, even excellent hardware struggled to compete. Sales continued to fall. Market share became smaller and smaller. Within just a few years, Microsoft admitted defeat. The company gradually ended development of Windows Phone. Billions of dollars had been spent, yet the smartphone dream was over. Looking back, many business experts believe the biggest mistake wasn't buying Nokia. It was arriving too late. By the time Microsoft entered the smartphone race, Apple and Android had already built ecosystems that were incredibly difficult to challenge. The lesson was clear. In technology, being good isn't always enough. Sometimes, you have to be early, and you have to move faster than everyone else. For Nokia, the mobile phone era had come to an end, but the Nokia story wasn't over, because while many people believed the company had disappeared forever, Nokia quietly began building a very different future. For many people, the Nokia story ended in 2014. The company had sold its mobile phone business. Microsoft's smartphone strategy had failed, and one of the greatest names in technology seemed to have disappeared forever. But appearances can be deceiving. While the world was focused on smartphones, Nokia quietly began rebuilding itself, not as a phone manufacturer, but as a technology company. Instead of competing with Apple, Samsung, or Google, Nokia shifted its attention to something far bigger: the invisible infrastructure that keeps the modern world connected. Telecommunication networks, the towers that carry phone calls, the equipment that powers mobile internet, the technology behind 4G, and now 5G. In 2016, a Finnish company called HMD Global acquired the rights to produce Nokia-branded mobile phones. Once again, the Nokia name returned to store shelves, this time running Android. For many longtime fans, it was a wave of nostalgia. The familiar logo was back, but the market had changed. Apple and Samsung dominated the premium smartphone segment. Chinese manufacturers like Xiaomi, Oppo, and Vivo were growing rapidly. The competition was fiercer than ever. Nokia-branded smartphones found loyal customers, but they never regained the dominance of the early 2000s. And perhaps that was never the goal. Today's Nokia earns much of its business from network infrastructure, enterprise technology, cloud networking, and 5G equipment used by telecom operators around the world. The company may no longer be the king of mobile phones, but it remains an important player in global communications. Looking back, it's easy to ask, what went wrong? Was it the iPhone, Android, Microsoft, or poor leadership? The truth is more complicated. Nokia didn't fail because it lacked talent. It didn't fail because it lacked money. It failed because it underestimated how quickly technology could change. History has taught us this lesson again and again. The biggest companies aren't guaranteed to stay on top forever. Success can create confidence, but too much confidence can create complacency. In business, standing still is often the greatest risk of all. Nokia's story reminds us that innovation never stops, markets never stop changing, and yesterday's leader can become tomorrow's lesson, because in the end, the greatest competitor in business isn't another company, it's change. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Business Decoded, and tell us in the comments, which company should we uncover next? Until next time, thanks for watching.